The stone tape theory suggests that the emotions and energies of the past can be recorded in the environment, replaying like a haunting echo for those sensitive enough to hear. Parapsychologist Andrew K. Johnston.
Welcome to Crypt Walkers, the podcast where the eerie and enigmatic come to life. Hosted by a police officer, Ryder,
But there was definitely something
in that house.
and his co-host, William,
Legitimacy first is more important.
director of WTCW Paranormal.
Hey guys, welcome back to Crypt Walkers. This is Ryder, and this is...
Will with WTCW Paranormal.
And we are definitely excited because this is our first actual case episode. So if you listen to the episode just before this, that was the introductory episode, and tonight is the first actual case. So I'm very excited. How about you?
Very, very exciting, of course. And a very famous case as well.
Yeah. I have to do a podcast shout out because I came across this case from MrBallen. I don't know if have you ever heard of MrBallen?
Oh, I love MrBallen, dude. He's awesome.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he did one of his episodes where he kind of has like three stories in one, but they're all kind of like the same.
Right.
And so I came across this case and it really stuck out to me, mostly because of the police element. So if you haven't listened to the introductory episode, I'm a police officer and
I'm a paranormal investigator. That's right.
yeah, so we're going to be looking at this case and we're going to break it down. And I'm going to kind of look at it from a police officer's perspective, and William's going to look at it from a paranormal investigator's perspective, and we'll just kind of see how things lie. So, anyway, so the case. It's the phantom crash of the A3. So, do you have any idea what I'm talking about when I say A3?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, good, because I definitely didn't understand what the hell A3 was until I really looked into it. So apparently, this case takes place in England. Okay. So apparently in England, the way they do their interstates and their highways and whatever is by this number system or letter system. So the A3 is one of the main arteries going into and out of London, England. So essentially how this story starts. It's on a cold night in December of 2002. This is on the A3 somewhere near, and I'm going to butcher this name because I thought English names would be very easy to pronounce. Apparently isn't. It's called Burpham Guildford, which is an area located in the county of Surrey, which, to put it into perspective, because everybody knows where London, England is, this is exactly 25 miles southwest of London, England. Okay. So anyway.
Not too close, no.
Yeah, no. So it just starts out like any typical motor vehicle story where people are just calling in a guy who's driving like a maniac. Okay, multiple calls to their 999, which is their version of 911. And so police got multiple reports of a maroon Vauxhall Astra, which is kind of like a Honda Civic, I guess. I looked up pictures of it. It kind of looks like a Honda Civic.
I thought it
And
looked pretty classy when I looked at it. I think this ghost got taste.
he's got some taste. Anyway, so they saw this Astra driving erratically on the A3 shortly before witnessing it leave the roadway and crash out of sight. Okay. So the responding units arrived on scene and were originally unable to see any signs of a crash. Okay. So essentially what they did, they arrived on scene. They tried to light up the roadway as much as possible because keep in mind, this is at night. And they started walking along the side of the road, looking down the embankments into what is essentially like a tree line. And at first they didn't see any signs of a crash. But when they walked about 20 meters from where they were, which I think is, what is a meter? That's like
3 feet.
that's 3 feet. So I can't do math. That's what, 60 feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 60 feet from where it was reported the crash to have occurred, they discovered a vehicle. Okay. The vehicle was nose down in a ditch, partially covered by debris, trees. It was not easy to see this vehicle from the roadway, like at all. If you're driving down the road, you're not going to see it.
They were fully in the ditch then, like, they were really in there.
Yeah, they really screwed up. Anyway, so they arrive on scene and they find this car, but there's something interesting about it. Keep in mind, they have just gotten multiple reports from multiple different vehicles driving up and down the highway. So it's not like it's just one person. They're all describing this vehicle, and there's no way to see the vehicle unless you knew it was there or witnessed it there. Well, the police end up basically observing the scene, and they determined that this didn't just happen. Like, this did not just, like, the wreck didn't happen 15 minutes ago. Okay. And they later end up finding something else that really points towards that this is definitely an old crash. While they're searching the area of the car, they don't find anyone in the vehicle. They're looking around the car and they start basically fanning out. Okay. So they use the car as the point of
Right.
origin. And they start fanning out. Well, one of the officers discovers a partially decomposed, skeletonized, dead body. It was
Oh, so that's,
found,
like, real old. Real old.
yeah, skeletonized, dude. Like, now it can, you can become skeletonized depending on conditions. I mean, you can become skeletonized fairly quickly, but based
I
off
mean,
of
not
their,
15 minutes quickly, though.
yeah, not 15 minutes. No. We're talking at least a couple weeks, at least a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is also the winter time. Okay. So this
Ooh.
isn't like in the heat of summer or anything like that. So this, using forensics, they determined that this must have occurred months previously, not minutes or hours, even months.
So I'm guessing the mystery comes from why does it seem like there's a pretty much a doppelganger of this car on the road that had the same crash there,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing too is that there was no reports of this at all when it was believed to have occurred. So once they found the body, they started the process of trying to identify the human remains. It was very easy to determine that it was a male, and so they started going along those lines. They used dental records and they essentially figured out who it was. It was a 21-year-old named Christopher Brian Chandler who was from Middlesex, England.
Wait,
I hope I said that right.
wait. Christopher Chandler? Chr
Yeah.
Chris Chan?
Yeah.
Sorry. The
Who is that?
the chronically online people know who I'm talking about. He's a very, very old school internet meme, Chris Chan.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my gosh, he has the same name as Chris Chan. Chris Chan is quite possibly, like, the most famous, like, just degenerate on the internet.
You're shitting me. How do I not know this? Why am I so like uneducated when it comes to the internet?
I feel like Chris Chan is, like, a pretty niche celebrity, though. Like, you walk up to somebody on the street asking about Chris Chan, they're gonna look at you some type of way.
No, I can't remember his name now, but there was apparently this documentary that I came across recently, which was this apparently buff dude that was like really popular in the early 2000s, and I guess he was one of the early memes. I don't know, and he
Mm.
ends up dying because you know steroids. Um,
Oh, you talking about Ziz. You talking about
yeah,
Ziz?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
goofy name. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
that
first of
dude.
all, I lived during this time. I mean, I'm not that old, but how the hell did I miss this? I don't know. Maybe I was just reading too
He
many.
wasn't that famous. He was just kinda like a niche 4chan guy.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, completely off topic, but that's
I
hilarious that the
know.
dude in the crash has the same name as, like, the ultimate internet lolcow.
Yeah. So to our listeners, just to put it in perspective, when I did this case, I never told William the details
Yeah,
other.
I'm listening to this with you guys right now.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat.
Yeah. So his reactions are exactly genuine. Anyway, so now, because I'm a cop, this is interesting. Apparently, Chandler had been wanted by the Metropolitan Police Department for being a suspect in a robbery case since July of 2002. So this is
Mm.
5 months before he was found. He disappeared without a trace not long after becoming a fugitive.
The police were probably after him for, like, warping time, you know what I mean? He, like, decomposed multiple weeks in the span of 15 minutes, you know what I mean? I think he.
I don't know why I just got like this image of Doc Brown just going, "You can't do that. It'll warp the time space continuum." Or but I
That's
don't.
Doctor Who.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, over there, I guess it would be Doctor Who.
Yeah. That's
I've
one of the Doctor Whos, they keep dying and coming back.
I've tried to get into that show and I just can't. I don't know why. My brother, my older brother, used to watch it a long time ago. I don't know if he still does, but
You're
anyway.
gonna you're gonna need a couple lifespans like Doctor Who has to finish that show. That show's so long.
Yeah, apparently I guess it started like in the 70s or something. But anyway, back to our case. So, according to reports, okay, a cell phone was found on his person, and it was revealed Chandler was attempting to reach his brother on the phone when the accident occurred. Now, his brother didn't think anything of it, and this is his brother explaining in interviews. His brother didn't think anything of it because when the call came through, his brother answered the phone, heard nothing, and then there was a click. Like it only lasted 1 second, 1 or 2 seconds. Okay. So he didn't think that, oh, my brother was just involved in a
Uh,
crash or anything.
So 2002, and this guy's calling his brother on a personal cell phone. This guy's a baller, man. He's got that Motorola Sidekick out. He's ready.
Yeah. My dad had one of those. The brick, the little brick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really,
This is
I'm
a war.
really,
This is a warning against distracted driving. Texting and driving.
yeah. Don't text and drive because you may die in a crash. And then 5 months later, you may appear as a ghost.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
anyway, so according to Chandler's brother, he never said anything, and there was no reason to believe that there was any alarm. Okay. Friends told police that Chandler was last known to have been at a party before he disappeared. Now, it is not, it's hard to say, or at least it was never reported, whether or not alcohol had anything to do with the crash. So, as far as the case, that's where that ends.
Mm.
But it's not open and shut because to this day, no one can explain how or why multiple witnesses witnessed a crash that didn't actually happen.
Right. Yeah. You know, the only route I can imagine people going down is like mass hysteria, but it's like I don't even think it just shouldn't even be possible to have the knowledge of hidden things like that, just seeing what happened far in the past,
Yeah.
multiple people at the same time.
Mass hysteria, I could believe it now, right? Like if, like, say you're driving down the road and you know the legend, right? You know the story.
Right, yeah.
And a bunch of people are saying they see this ghost car or something.
Yeah.
That I can understand, but I mean, this is right when they found him. So
Right. That's what I was gonna say. Well, it couldn't even be mass hysteria because the story hadn't it wasn't popular yet. I mean, for these people witnessing it, these onlookers, it was just like a regular this dude crashed in a ditch moment, not we're witnessing one of the most famous paranormal cases in history moment. You know what I mean? They're just like this guy crashed into a ditch.
yeah, I mean, for England, this is a pretty popular story. I would say it's the equivalent of like Resurrection Mary for us, you know.
I
Um,
don't even know. I mean, why? You see, you're more educated about these paranormal stories than me. I'm supposed to be the investigator here, man. I don't know what Resurrection Mary is.
so what you're saying is now we have a podcast episode that needs to be
For
needs to
real.
be
What is,
explained.
what is Resurrection Mary? What is, are you talking about like the Virgin Mary?
So Resurrection Mary is, and I won't give out too much because I know I definitely want to do an episode on this, but I didn't realize you might not know it.
No, no.
So the Resurrection Mary story is essentially it's kind of where hitchhiking stories began, like the hitchhiker ghost.
Right,
But there's actually some real elements to it. So it's, I mean, I would probably chalk it up to a legend, but I mean, there's some pretty substantial, like, it's one of the rare legends that you can actually trace down where it started. Like, you can
right.
actually, like, the person who witnessed it. So, I think a lot of stuff since then, though, right, became more legend as people added stuff to it. But essentially, it's this hitchhiker spirit who um, is near Chicago, and Resurrection Cemetery is like a big cemetery there. I think it's actually a Catholic cemetery, and essentially there's like this nightclub nearby, or a it's not. I don't want to say nightclub. That makes it sound bad.
A perfect location to put right next to a church.
Yeah, well, it's like a I can't. We don't have them now, but it's like a dance hall, right? Like
Mm.
where the community would put on dances.
Like a venue. Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll save the story. We'll save it.
yeah.
We'll save it. So I do want to hear it in full.
It's a long story, and I want
But
to make it a nice one.
right.
So
So where we are is people are trying to figure out why is it that the police are just now discovering this body where people 15 minutes ago, multiple people calling and saying they're seeing this crash, and now they're discovering, the remnants of the crash, and it appears to have happened months and months prior, not recently at all.
yeah.
And it kind of brings into question, well, how is it possible, right? The only rational explanation would be that somebody with the same car
Mhm.
model crashed into a ditch and then pulled out while the people who called weren't looking and then drove away. And then a doppelganger of that car is in the same spot,
Yeah.
which I honestly would say is less likely
Yep.
than, something a little bit. I think that's probably the least reasonable explanation.
And what's also cool is, and I mean, obviously this is a podcast, so you can't visually see the photo, but there is a photo of the crime scene. Okay, it's during the day, so obviously they were working this scene overnight into the early morning. But you can see the police officers, and they're looking at the Astra. Okay, and you can tell how steep that embankment is. Like that,
Right,
what if you get down in there in a car, you ain't getting out.
right.
Not without a tow truck.
Yeah, you had
Uh,
to be getting towed by like a F-350.
yeah, our sponsor for today is going to be
The impending lawsuit. No,
impending.
I mean, yeah, that is wild. That is
Yeah.
wild.
So I would love to look at the police reports. Like I could
Yeah,
just imagine because they had to write down where the car was, and they also like obviously in order for us to get the reports of where they first searched, there was no signs of a crash. They
right.
had to move 60 feet down before they saw the crash. So
Well,
that kind of blows the okay, maybe a car got down in there and then got back out. Because I
yeah,
mean, you would definitely see the ruts. Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Well, if the photo exists somewhere, you can find it over on our Instagram coming
yeah,
out alongside this episode at Crypt Walkers.
yep. So you can find us anywhere with at Cryptwalkers. So I tried to keep it simple as possible.
That's
So
right. Yeah, we'll see, we can look at that picture. If we can find it, dig it up. I mean, what are some theories? do you think you could string, right? Because I threw out, the very unlikely chance maybe somebody with the same model had a similar crash and pulled out. That's really the only rational theory I could think of. And other than that, I don't know. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know where I would go from there, and that makes me question, with the police on the scene for that long overnight, what were they kind of testing for? What were they looking for? You know what I mean? What theories were they trying to string?
I could honestly say that coming from a cop's perspective, it can get kind of tiresome, dealing with accident scenes. I don't want to say mundane, but my municipality where I work, luckily I don't have to do a lot of accident scenes, but the local city nearby does. And I mean, it depends on how in depth you want to go. Now, considering this has a death involved with it,
Yeah.
it's going to be that more scrutinized. So they were probably out there for hours just mapping where they believe the car went off the road, the distance from the road to, so that's why, like I said, I'd love to see the police reports.
Right. Now, following this crash happening, has there been any follow-up kind of legends or stories? Do people still claim that they see this car, or was this kind of like a one and done kind of thing like that?
From what I came across, as far as reported stuff, and our listeners might be able to, cue in more, uh, especially if we have listeners who are in England and know a lot more about this and will probably be like, dude, you didn't cover this at all as well as you should have. But anyway, there's as far as like actual reported stories, officially, no. It was a one and done. Uh, to quote, there was an article. Let me go ahead and find it. I'm going to quote Surrey News. Okay, this was an article that was written 20 years later, so in October of 2022. So they give basically a rundown of the accident and everything, and quote unquote, like at the end, it says, uh, it's quoting a gentleman who was actually interviewed by that reporter, um, about what it was like to find the car. So let me see here. So they were talking to Steve Casey, who worked for Mako Recovery Services. So this is basically the guy who's the tow truck. Okay.
Right.
Tow truck driver. He says, quote unquote, the car was badly damaged, said Mr. Casey. It was written off and rusty, and it was an old car. Someone said afterwards that there might have been a ghost involved, but you aren't told that at the time. I was just getting on with the job, is what he says. But he added that the incident still stirs memories when he drives down the A3 near Burpham, saying he thinks about it every single time. Nearly
Yeah.
nearly 2 decades of on debate still rages on about why people heard the noise and why exactly it was reported at the location of the crash 5 months previously.
Yeah, I mean, if I was the guy who pulled the mystery machine out of the ditch, I'd be pretty I'd be like, "Well, there's the spot," you know what I mean? Like, there it is.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
what's interesting about this case specifically to me, and what makes it kind of hard to tackle, is who would be the expert on this? Who would you consult who would have some insight into this? Because obviously the police don't know why, people are seeing this crash, reporting this crash, a multitude of witnesses. Paranormal investigators, what are we going to do? I'm not going to sit here and, theorize that there's a hyperbaric time chamber sitting in that ditch. You know what I mean? Who is it that you would be like, do you have any idea what happened here? Right? That's what's interesting about it to me.
Yeah, the police are gonna look at it from the investigative perspective of, okay, we have a crash, there's a dead body. Okay, was he killed before the crash? Was there, they're looking for signs of foul play, which from what I have heard from this, there really isn't any. It was just a crash and he wasn't found. But
Right.
he would have never been found. Like if you look at this picture, that we're going to have on Instagram and all of our socials, uh, it's it's pretty wooded. Like there's no just glancing over, even in the wintertime. There's no just glancing over and seeing a car there. It has
Right.
to be called in. And I would be more like, okay, maybe there's something up if it was just one car that reported it in. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I saw that car crash. Okay. Okay, did you really see the car crash or were you involved in this somehow? But
Exactly.
the fact that there are multiple reports.
I
So,
mean, unless you wanna go as far to argue that however many people called in were all involved, but I think that'd be a little bit of a stretch, especially if the police couldn't find any connection between each individual caller.
yep. Yep. And
Um,
they were just reporting a what we call a CNI driver, which is a careless and imprudent driver, somebody who isn't able to maintain the road, uh, their lane, and then suddenly he just goes off the road, you
right.
know? So, uh, I mean, if I was
Well,
driving
it's
by and I'd saw that, yeah, I'd call it in, but I'd be like, all right, just some moron that doesn't know how to drive
yeah.
and, uh,
Well, it's possible he could have been under the influence as well because, as you mentioned earlier, he was on the way back from a party,
mhm,
and he crashed into a ditch. That's not really like a a type of accident where another car hits you. That's usually your own fault if you go into a ditch most of the time.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the other thing too is because he was skeletonized by the time I don't think they could do any toxicology. Uh, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a pathologist, but I don't think they could have
Yeah,
done
I highly
any.
doubt they'd be able to find traces of alcohol in his bones, but, you
Yeah,
never know.
but a thought just occurred to me. Um, like a second ago, I was like, okay, yeah, I would just assume it was somebody that was driving like a moron and just went off the road. But I think I would have pulled over and at least tried to, you know, like
Right.
see.
Help him
It's like
or do something,
it's like
but the people were just like, "Well, hopefully the police can get him before his car blows up, I guess."
they were just like, not my problem, Willie.
No,
It's like I'm
I'm
just
not
going to
being
drive on now.
I'm not being late for you, Chris Chan. They just kept going.
um, but yeah, so and that's where this case stands. And like I said, I came across it while listening to a podcast, MrBallen, and I was like, man, that's and as far as his cases go, it really wasn't a long. Like I think maybe he did 10 minutes on it. It was one of those things. But I was like, man, I couldn't get it out of my head. You know,
Right.
I kept repeating,
Well,
and
how deep in can you go into it? Because with when did the case close? Right? When did the investigation into this close? Do you know?
so the actual like investigative case and everything closed in 2002. So as far as the police were concerned, this was a crash. There was no signs of foul play.
Right.
Um, obviously they were also going to look and see if there was any like evidence of the robbery in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go down tons and tons of rabbit holes of what they probably investigated.
Yeah.
And, was it his car? All these types of things. Uh,
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Like, you can't really look too far into it because the police didn't find anything major that was indicative of maybe here's how he aged so rapidly, or you know what I mean?
yeah.
If
I'm
you
sure
know,
the conditions were, uh, I mean, you got to think. So, well, let's look it up. Guildford, England. Temperatures. Of course, it's going to probably give me Celsius, which as an
yeah.
American, I can't read.
Well,
Um,
not even that, right? Even if it was colder, the fact that they stated that the car was rusted, that the metal had actually oxidized, is
yeah,
indicative of the fact that it had been there for a while. For a car to rust, I
yeah,
mean, it has to be sitting in moisture for quite a bit,
yeah, yeah,
at least more than 15 minutes.
yeah. And the body itself from July, which is their average temperatures, is about 70 degrees, to December, where the average temperature is about 37 degrees Fahrenheit. So like that'll do
Yeah.
some damage to a body.
Right.
You know what I
Definitely.
mean? Yeah. Uh, that'll do some damage. So, um,
But all like the Christian jokes aside and everything like that, I do feel terrible for the guy. Uh, it's kind of sad that it seemed like he was trying to reach out to his brother
yeah.
and something had gone wrong. I don't know, like, I've heard a lot of theories, especially in the paranormal space, about a lot of different things. Like, some investigators that I know don't actually believe in ghosts. They've told me that that's just the more accepted thing among
Hmm.
people. I'm like, well, what is it that you believe? And they say, well, they believe that like alternate dimensions can sometimes like warp with ours and make things just go strangely wrong. Which for me, I mean, if that's your belief, do you? It sounds like tinfoil cap to me, but I mean, that's if that's what you believe, right?
Actually, in the realm of like we don't know anything really
Right.
um to be very particular on. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
really, any theory is up for
Right.
grabs. Like, uh,
Well, that's the
yeah.
only thing I could point to in this instance, really, like, one of the first things that thought came to my head, I was like, maybe this is one of those things that some of these people I've met talk about just something in the timeline glitching a little bit. A
Have
glitch in the matrix, I guess you could say.
Are you familiar with the stone tape theory?
No, no.
Okay, and I'm gonna look this up so that way I don't screw this up. But essentially, the stone tape theory is uh, it's a pseudoscientific claim that ghosts and hauntings occur when certain historical information is released from the environment. Okay. So, like, the conditions would have to be met exactly, which I doubt because it happened in July. But anyway, the conditions would have to match exactly. And then you would essentially either witness, like visually, or you'll hear, or you'll essentially be a part, you would witness an event replay
Right.
itself out.
Yeah,
Right?
it's almost similar to the concept of residual hauntings within paranormal investigation
Yeah.
of historical events repeating continuously.
But one caveat to the stone tape theory is this is that so right now I'm having this conversation with you, right?
Right,
Um, and I can take an object and slam it down on my table, and I'm angry, and like there's energy in that, right? So if I
right.
slam an object down on the table, that energy gets transmitted to that object, and it basically creates an etching into the whatever the world, right?
Timeline per
Yeah.
se.
So a year from now, right? Let's say I move out and somebody else
Mhm.
comes into my apartment and they're sitting in this room, which could be a bedroom, but at this point it's an office. And in the middle of the night, when the conditions are all the same, like the temperature, the way that everything is set up right now, they'll hear that bang. Now,
Right.
I'm still alive. I'm not dead. I'm just off, I'm in
Yeah.
another house. Um, but so it's not necessarily that you have to be dead. So some people might say,
Right.
okay, maybe this is a case of that.
Yeah, so it's more like a very extreme version of history repeating itself, that general notion, but with kind of a supernatural twist to it. Because like, the whole notion of history repeating itself is a lot more subtle,
Mhm.
whereas this sounds like history will literally repeat itself exactly the same way. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Is what Yeah.
like you're watching a movie.
Yeah, I don't wanna trail too far off into the conspiracy theory area because as a paranormal investigator, you gotta keep your street cred, right? Because it's already not it's not a very palatable, hobby to have for the majority of, you
Yeah.
know, quote, unquote, "normal people." I mean, we all have our things, but, you know, Imma keep it in for today. I don't wanna trail off too far.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, and I'm just gonna because since this is our first case, I just want to point this out to our audience. All we're gonna be able to do is speculate. we're not connected enough to the case to
Yeah.
be able to. I mean, I think, and you can disagree with me if you will, but I think if we had it our way, we would actually go to that location and start trying to do a paranormal investigation just to see if there's anything
Yeah, that would be fun.
and interview people and see if they have experiences in that area. I
Well,
couldn't find any reports, but
I'm sure it's a massive urban legend now, though. You
yeah,
ask like a lot of people in that area, I'm sure a lot of them are like, "Oh yeah, my second cousin's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend twice removed saw, this and that on that road."
yep,
But no, I mean, like I said, it is definitely sad, like I mean, especially like I mean, there wasn't anything like strange sticking out about, the death. He
yep,
tried to reach out to somebody, didn't come through. I mean, he was there dead for assuming that, this weird coincidence with the, calling the police thing. Let's say he actually was there for however long, 5 months, right? Let's
hmm
say he was there for, how long his body had aged. I mean, he had sat there with no proper burial, no cremation, nothing. I mean, he was just there for a long time and nobody saw him, you know what I mean? I feel bad. I do.
yeah. To quote another article that I read on this, and they really kind of summed it up based on that. It was in their final thoughts. The website I was looking at was called Ace Breakers, which I guess it's a website for like salvage stuff. But it's kind of weird that they would have a paranormal
Yeah, maybe they were the ones who, like, took apart his car for parts or something, I don't
yeah, a paranormal
know.
article. But anyway,
Yep.
and to quote in their final thoughts, they said, "In short, it was only because of the reports of a car veering off the road at the exact same spot that meant Christopher Chandler could finally be laid to rest, despite no real incident actually taking place that night."
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, I feel terrible, you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
do. And for the family as well, they're like, "Man, my brother just, like, gone. He's just I don't know where the hell he's at." And, if the brother lived in that same area, he very well could have driven by where his brother's car was every day and not known.
yeah. And that's the other thing too. I want to point out he is an alleged suspect in a robbery. I believe you're innocent until proven guilty.
But my personal thing is, like, I think that it was this Russian philosopher who said, "You show me the man, I'll show you the crime." Where I
hmm
think that just because the police looked into this dude so deeply that they may have, either maybe he did do a robbery, maybe he didn't. I just think the fact they looked into him so hard as a result of, the mysticism around his death, they might have, tied him to somebody who did it, or you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
the simple fact they investigated this seemingly normal man who
hmm
died under completely normal circumstances, I think they just found some dirt on him or found
Yeah.
some kind of connection.
I mean, we'll just never know. I mean, we it's nothing was written enough for us to know. So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
but that police report, I'm sure I wonder if they noted that fact, that people had called in so recently, yet the body and car remains were so old. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if the police on scene took that into, account
Yeah.
or found
Maybe.
that compelling.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Um, yeah, I was just reading this thing too on the Ace Breakers website. That's kind of interesting to point out that his friends didn't understand why they don't understand why he left the area. And oddly enough, he never informed anyone why he suddenly decided to drive to Surrey. And as such, no one knew where to start looking for him even when he disappeared. And keep in mind, this is before, Life 360 and the ease of access as far as like being able to track somebody on a cell phone, you know?
Exactly. I mean,
So,
the proof is in the pudding there. I mean, the dude was on the side of the road for the evidence points to be 5 months, and nobody, knew any better.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is wild. So what would you say that how would we conclude this case? What's the takeaway? Right? What do you think happened? That's my suggestion, my question.
So, I mean, people might see it as me taking it as face value, but just because of the sheer fact that there was multiple reports, I strongly believe that some people driving along the A3 that night really did see what they saw.
Mm,
I firmly believe that they saw a vehicle drive off the road and they called it in. Now, whether or not it is a haunting, I don't know.
right.
That's for
Yeah.
society to
Yeah.
decide.
The viewers at home, they can decide that one if they think it's a haunting.
Yeah. And listeners, we want to hear from you. We want you to connect with us. You can reach out to us on social media. Uh, Feel free to leave a like basically just talk about this case. Tell us what you
Yeah,
because we're
correct.
curious.
Because I mean, if you haven't picked up from the actual episode itself, I mean, me and Ryder here are seemingly pretty dumbfounded as to what actually happened. I literally have no idea what happened. Like, if somebody can think of a better theory than me, I would be very impressed.
Yes, actually, yeah. If you can come up with a theory and tell me what's what, or if you're involved with the case, then please let us know. I am not opposed to us
Yeah.
revisiting this case in the future.
Oh yeah, with some developments for sure. My theory or my conclusion really is I think that I would have to know how many people called in. Did they specify that? How many people was it?
They never did. They never
Because
did.
I would say this. Here's my most this is maybe what happened, right?
Hmm.
Let's just throw all the paranormal stuff out of the window,
Okay.
even though it is inherently very strange. Here would be my rational explanation. If the number of people calling was under 5, I think it's entirely possible that somebody may have run him off the road and kept it on the low key
Hmm.
until they felt bad and were like, "Guys, I need you to help me in reporting this case. Let's all call in anonymously so I don't get caught up." You know what I mean? That's literally my only explanation, and even that is a bit of a reach.
I, I don't that's actually a good line of thinking. I wonder if the police actually, they have this
Right.
concept. They taught us this in the academy, which is if somebody calls and they leave their name,
Mhm.
they're more trustworthy than if they call in anonymously.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think the higher the amount of people who called about this,
Hmm.
the less likely this theory is true.
Yeah.
But I would say if it's under 5, it's entirely possible that one person could have, cooperated some people together and been like, "Hey, I did this thing, maybe I ran this guy off the road." I mean, it really depends though about what the state of the car was in because if the only damage sustained appeared to be from the crash itself, then I have no idea.
Yeah. Ace
Yeah.
Breakers said that it had, uh, I'm trying to find, yeah, it only mentions the car whenever it's talking about when his body was found. It was apparent that he had suffered several injuries, or excuse me, several severe injuries in the crash and had most likely crawled out of the passenger door due to the extensive damage to the driver's side door. He never
Oof.
made it to the top of the embankment.
Wow. Yeah, that is so sad.
Yeah.
That is so
And
sad.
and I would also like to note, we're not talking about this case to you know, uh, speak ill of the dead or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I just wanted
yeah,
to make sure that that is out there. And uh,
right.
I, if I had a family member, especially if one of my brothers were in a crash like that, I would hope, even if it was paranormal related or not, that he'd be found. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. But yeah, that's my theory. Maybe somebody ran them off the road. They waited a couple months, and then they started getting some guilt about it, and they're like, "Guys, let's call in anonymously and report this." And but that's literally, I mean, that's all I've got. I can't think of anything better.
Yeah, me neither. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, at this point, like I said, to our listeners, be sure to send in your responses and tell us what you think. Uh, and other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the gates, and we're gonna leave the crypt yard, and
Yeah.
and that's it. We're done walking through the crypts tonight. So
For tonight, yeah. I think we came to a pretty solid theory there, at least. You know what I mean? I'm rocking with what you were saying. I think my theory was all right. But even then, I'm still not confident in it. I think it very well could be a number of other things.
okay, so listeners, be sure to stick around, listen to the trailer for our next case, which is going to premiere on November 6th, 2024. Now, in the meantime, you can actually listen to our what I what I what I'm going to call the listener files. Okay, so that's going to be a small shortened podcast hosted by me, and essentially we're going to release those episodes in between these case episodes. So a post will be done every Wednesday. It's just it'll be a
And
case, the mini episode, and a case.
and they are what they sound like. It's a story from a listener, just to clear that up.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
be
we'd love to
sure
hear.
check out our link tree, and also I will include um, an email address that you can actually send in your listener stories. So it'll be me going over your guys' stories and reading them out over the air. So be sure to you know, type up at least legibly, or,
Yeah.
uh,
You want to hear your story? Send it out, man.
yeah, it doesn't, there's going to be no judgment, like, at all. That's a big part of this podcast, is we're not going to judge anything. So, okay.
I
Well,
did I did judge the alternate dimension theorists earlier. I'm
a
sorry, guys.
little bit.
No, I just
Damn
I
it, we're
gotta
going to
be
get canceled. First
I
episode.
I have to be careful on who I say. I don't think I necessarily think this is true, because in the paranormal community, I'm ingrained with all the theorists, all of them. I denounce one of them and I get jumped on.
Well, that's what makes this field so interesting. So,
Oh yeah.
until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Next time on Crypt Walkers.
Welcome to the darkened halls of the Limp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, where history intertwines with the supernatural. Once the home of the notorious Limp family, this grand mansion hides secrets that whisper through its walls. From tragic deaths to unexplained sightings, the Limp Mansion has earned its reputation as one of America's most haunted locations. In this episode, we'll delve into the ghostly encounters reported by visitors and explore the mansion's eerie history. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of the Limp family, facing the specters of their past, from lost fortunes to restless spirits. Open the crypt. Take a walk with us. Subscribe now and prepare to confront the shadows that linger in the heart of St. Louis. The Limp Mansion awaits. Episode airs Wednesday, November 6th, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Are you ready to walk amongst the crypts with us? Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an episode. Don't forget to leave a review and share your own paranormal stories with us. We might feature them in an upcoming episode of Crypt Walkers, the Listener Files. Check us out on social media by clicking the link tree in the show notes. If you want to send in your own case or spooky story, email us at contact@cryptwalkers.net. Also, be sure to check out William's adventures with WTCW Paranormal by clicking his link tree in the show notes.